Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wilson. Our top stories. International pressure mounts for an independent inquiry into the deaths of more than 100 Palestinians awaiting food aid in Gaza. Dozens of far-right Israeli activists try to storm the Gaza boundary fence to build illegal settlements. Polls open in Iran for elections in the first big test of public opinion since mass anti-government protests erupted in 2022. And united for a common cause, Germany's transport workers team up with climate activists for a joint day of strikes. China is among the nations condemning the mass casualties of Palestinians at an aid convoy in Gaza on Thursday. Beijing has expressed shock at the incident, which left more than 100 dead and hundreds more injured. Israel says it acted in self-defense when its troops opened fire on crowds waiting for food deliveries in Gaza City. But it's blamed the majority of deaths on what it called a stampede by Gazans on the trucks. France and Spain have denounced the killings, along with regional powers, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Egypt. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for an independent inquiry. It comes as the United States blocked a statement put forward to the UN Security Council that would have assigned blame to Israel. Washington says it's urgently seeking information on what happened. Palestine's ambassador to the UN has attacked the use of the Security Council's veto and called for an end to the killing of civilians in Gaza.
According to the information that we have, dozens of them have bullets in their heads. It's not like, firing in the sky to restrain people if there was confusions and chaos. It was intentionally targeting and killing. This outrageous, massacre is a testimony to the fact that as long as the Security Council is paralyzed and vetoes casted, then it is costing the Palestinian people their lives.
Well, let's go live to Gaza now. We can speak to our correspondent, Akram Al-Satari, who joins us from the southern city of Rafah. Akram, good to talk to you. One day on after this disaster, what's happening in Gaza today?
One day after the disaster, more disasters are taking place. The disaster that took place yesterday was somehow at a high level. The disasters that are taking place today are at the household levels. At least 7 people were killed in the Az-Zaytun neighborhood by an Israeli airstrike that targeted their home. 2 people were killed in Gaza central area by another bombardment that targeted their home. Around 7 or 8 people were injured because of an aerial bombardment, airstrike that took their home in Rafah area. So the killing is continuous. The number of victims is increasing. The number of people killed and injured and the number of the houses are destroyed, and the general situation of lack to safety and personal security has been prevailing in the Gaza Strip. So it looks like even Israel has not changed, according to the Palestinian sources, Israel has not changed the engagement rules or opening fire rules or dealing with the IDP's rules, because the people who are targeted, people who are hungry and seeking food for their families, yet they're targeted by the Israeli army. They're shot at the head, like was said in the report. Some of them lost their upper limbs because of the gunfire that was shot by tanks, which is around 115 millimeter caliber. So you can imagine what it can do to the body of the people. So, but the bottom line, the suffering continues, the bombardment continues, devastation continues, loss of houses and souls continues in the Gaza Strip.
Akram, thanks very much indeed, Akram Al-Satari there in Rafah for us. Well, let's get the view now from Israel. Our correspondent Sarah Coates is standing by in Tel Aviv. Sarah, good to talk to you. Sarah, we've been seeing these pictures of settler activity massing around the border crossing at Erez. What's going on there?
Hi, Andrew. After that shocking aid convoy attack that we saw yesterday in Gaza, there was another incident on the Gaza border. A number of very extremist Israeli settlers, they broke through, forced their way through a military checkpoint near the Erez crossing. some of them making about 500 metres into Gaza, into the besieged Palestinian enclave, setting up a number of structures like little houses before they were turned back by the military. They say they want to resettle Gaza. This is certainly a very worrying incident that we saw yesterday, just given the fact that they actually managed to breach through a military checkpoint. We do need to remember back in January that one of these extreme settler groups, it laid out plans to resettle parts of the Gaza Strip with 6 settlements. And we have been hearing from the Netanyahu government and other members of this Israeli war cabinet that there are no plans to resettle Gaza. But from what we saw yesterday, it certainly appears as though there is a growing push among the far-right wing to do just that.
And Sarah, these municipal elections where the ultra-Orthodox parties have been doing quite well, does that tell us anything about what's going on politically in Israel?
Andrew, major gains for these right-wing candidates right around the country, and this is certainly stoking fears among the secular population and also, of course, among the Palestinian population that live here in Israel about the direction that the country is heading in. In Jerusalem, the far right won a majority of municipal seats. Elsewhere in the country, the results were very much the same. There were, of course, exceptions, like here in Tel Aviv, with the Liberal mayor winning yet another term in office. In the city of Haifa, which is about 100 kilometres back behind me, along that coastline, there is still a runoff ongoing, so we don't know the results there. But it is important, Andrew, also to point out an extremely low voter turnout this time. Just 31.5% of eligible people cast their ballots. And while I did say that, you know, there is a lot of fear among the secular, along the Palestinians, many people aren't really looking at this too closely, as there's a lot of movement now toward pushing for an early election to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu and his government. And of course, there's so much pressure and worry about these hostages.
Indeed. Sarah, thanks very much indeed. Sarah Coates there in Tel Aviv for us. Now, the United Nations says that Israel has yet to provide evidence that members of its Palestinian Refugee Agency took part in the Hamas attacks on October the 7th. Allegations against UNRWA employees led to major donors suspending $450 million in aid to the agency, despite the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the enclave.
The investigation remains ongoing. OIOS will seek and to corroborate additional information and to compare the information obtained with the materials held by Israeli authorities, which OIOS expects to receive shortly. OIOS staff are planning to visit Israel soon to obtain information from Israeli authorities that may be relevant to the investigation.
Large crowds have gathered in Moscow for the funeral of Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The Kremlin critic died last month at an Arctic penal colony where he'd been serving a decades-long prison sentence. His wife, supporters and Western leaders have all pointed the finger at President Vladimir Putin, but the Kremlin has denied any state involvement in his death. Our correspondent, Dasha Chernyshova, is in Moscow for us. Dasha, good to talk to you. What more can you tell us?
Well, indeed, we've seen crowds of people gathering in Moscow's Maria district for the farewell ceremony to the Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, labeled as terrorist and extremist in Russia. We have seen these people coming here with flowers. They were queuing first to the church where the religious ceremony was taking place, but only a few dozen people were allowed inside, including Navalny's family and his closest allies. The other people were queuing. The queue was about 1 kilometer long. They didn't make it inside, but after the coffin was taken out from the church, they were throwing those flowers they brought to the coffin, and they followed the coffin on the way to the cemetery where the body of Alexei Navalny was finally buried. It was buried to the music of Frank Sinatra, My Way, and his mother also had a chance to say farewell to his son on the cemetery itself. So certainly certainly it is a very important moment for Navalny's supporters. We have seen some heavy police presence in the area. We couldn't broadcast anywhere close to the where the ceremony was taking place, and you have to understand that police is pretty much everywhere around this Marina district, and the mobile internet has also been shut down. The Kremlin has said that Russians should remember about the responsibility for taking part in any illegal gatherings, and also said that official Moscow has nothing to say to the family of Alexei Navalny on the day of his funeral.
Dasha, quite a bit of reaction over here following Putin's comments on the risk of nuclear war made during his annual address. But this isn't the first time President Putin has brought up the subject of nuclear weapons, is it?
That's right. We keep hearing about the potential nuclear conflict between Russia and the West after as a spillover of the confrontation between Russia and Ukraine, and Russia and the West, which is supporting Ukraine. So indeed, the Russian president has once again reminded that Moscow is a nuclear power and it has the weapons needed to defend Russia's sovereignty. But again, from the perspective of Moscow, it is the Western countries that are trying to encroach on the Russian territory. They're trying to weaken Russia, and the Russian president was talking about that in his Federal Assembly address. Having said that, we've also heard some comments coming from the head of Pentagon, Lloyd Austin, saying that if Ukraine is defeated, then the NATO countries will be fighting with Russia. And Moscow called those comments irresponsible, saying that they only increase the escalation.
Dasha, thanks very much indeed. Dasha Chernish over there in Moscow for us. You're watching CGTN, still to come, a taste of things in the future. Bulgarian cheesemakers looking to spread exports to China and the rest of the world.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos and unicorn companies. Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
The National People's Congress, China's top legislature, and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, the country's advisory body, convened their annual sessions in Beijing. Lawmakers and advisors will assess the country's performance, craft laws, and refine policies that will chart the course of China's ongoing modernization drive. Join us as we bring you highlights and analysis of China's agenda in our special coverage of the 2 sessions here on CGTN.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. International pressure mounts for an independent inquiry into the deaths of more than 100 Palestinians awaiting food aid in Gaza. Dozens of far-right Israeli activists try to storm the Gaza boundary fence to build illegal settlements. Voters in Iran are electing a new parliament, the first test of public opinion since mass anti-government protests in 2022, which followed the death of a young woman detained for not wearing the traditional hijab. Turnout is expected to be low because of widespread anger over low living standards and political and social restrictions. Activists say taking part in the poll will lend undue legitimacy to the government. However, Iran's supreme leader says it's a religious and patriotic duty for people to take part.
Both our friends, those who love the Iranian people, and ill-wishers are watching our country and our esteemed nation's issues closely. Pay attention to this. Make your friends happy and disappoint the ill-wishers.
Our correspondent Ehsan Kevani has the latest from Tehran.
I'm now in the residence of the supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei. Just a few minutes ago, he dropped his vote to the ballot box. Today, Friday, March the 1st, we have two separate elections in the Islamic Republic of Iran. The first one is the elections for the parliament, in which 290 MPs will be elected by people. Simultaneously, we have the elections for the Assembly of Experts of the leadership. In this election, the Assembly Experts, more than 140 candidates are competing for 88 seats in the Assembly. This Assembly is crucially important because it elects, oversees, and even dismisses the supreme leader and the political system of the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's why this assembly is very important. As you might know, in Iran's political system, the supreme leader is in fact the commander-in-chief of the country. He appoints the head of the judiciary. He appoints all the military commanders of the country, and the supreme leader always defines all the foreign and domestic policies. That's why the Assembly of Experts is crucially important, and many analysts say within the next few years they might make a big decision in Iran's political system.
Berlin transport workers and climate activists are staging a joint action calling for better working conditions and investment in Germany's public transport system. It's the culmination of a week of staggered strikes which have left buses, trams and underground trains idle across most of the country. Well, our correspondent Peter Oliver is in Berlin and joins us now live. Peter, good to talk to you. Is it rare for transport workers to be joined by climate campaigners in such a walkout?
Well, this is a new thing, but before we get to that, it's better to look at both of these separately before we look at them in the round. Strikes are no new thing in Germany at the moment, whether it's air travel, train travel or public transport. There seems to be a strike every other week. And what we'd seen this week had been Verdi, the public transportation union workers, the public transportation workers union, tell their members they were coming out in 14 of the 16 German states. Now, here in Berlin, the strike came to an end, or this most recent strike came to an end at 2 p.m. local time, so just over an hour ago. Elsewhere across Germany, this is continuing way into the early hours of the morning. They want a shorter working week for those who are on shift patterns within the public transport system. What we have heard from the Berlin Public Transport Administrator, that's BVG, they've said this particular strike was unnecessary and completely exaggerated. It did cripple the German capital throughout Friday. But, as we mentioned earlier, it was joined by Fridays for Future. Now, you may remember back in 2018, this was a huge movement, a huge climate change movement championed by Greta Thunberg. In fact, back in 2018, she ended up with a meeting here in Germany with then-Chancellor Angela Merkel, Luisa Neuberg, who was the German equivalent of Greta Thunberg. She was pretty much on every talk show that you could get her on at the time. They dropped out of the public consciousness quite a bit over the preceding months and years. They are back now. In fact, we were talking to the press secretary from Fridays for Future just before I came live to you, and they said what they're trying to do right now is attach themselves not just to climate change causes, but also to social justice causes. And that is why they've aligned themselves with Verdi, the transport union. This was the first time officially they've linked up together in order to strike for climate and for better conditions for workers. They may well be out at future strikes, because there will be future strikes. Because just on Thursday night, we saw GDL, the train drivers union, walk out of talks with Deutsche Bahn, the train network company here in Germany, saying those talks had broken down yet again. They appear to be particularly acrimonious, those talks. There's a press conference planned for Monday, and we expect further strikes from the train drivers to be announced. Those strikes have, well, they've been going on for months already. More seem to be coming. We'll be keeping an eye to see if Fridays for Future attach themselves to those as well.
OK, Peter, thanks very much indeed. Peter Oliver there in Berlin for us. French farmers have staged another protest at Paris's iconic Arc de Triomphe as the pressure from the country's agriculture sector continues. More than 60 people were arrested, and the nearby Champs-Élysées was briefly blocked by tractors and bales of hay. It follows weeks of demonstrations across France as well as in other European countries amid anger over EU red tape, cheap imports and fuel taxes. At least 46 people have been killed in the Bangladeshi capital, Dhaka, after fire ripped through a 6-story building. The blaze started in a restaurant where many families were eating. Dozens of people were rescued, with more than 20 being treated for serious burns. An investigation is reported to be underway. A New Zealand court has ordered 3 tourism companies to pay $6 million in compensation to the victims of the White Island volcano disaster. The volcano erupted in 2019, killing 22 people and badly injuring 25 others. The tour operator was found guilty last year of negligence and safety breaches after it ignored signs of heightened activity in the weeks leading up to the eruption. Forecasters are warning that heat and high winds at the weekend will bring critical conditions to Texas as the U.S. state's biggest ever wildfire continues to spread. More than 400,000 hectares of land are burning, and at least one person is reported dead. Just a tiny fraction of the fires have been contained, and one has spread to a neighboring state. Our correspondent Jim Spellman now reports.
Wildfires tearing across West Texas have merged into the largest in the state's history, leaving behind destroyed homes and displaced families.
It's still emotional. This is our life. I mean, we've been here for 50 years, and it's pretty tough.
Fire crews are working around the clock, hoping to take advantage of improved weather before conditions deteriorate again as flames move quickly across vast stretches of land.
The danger going forward will be the weather coming up again this weekend, where we're going to see again humidities fall and winds pick up, and making sure that we continue to bring enough resources into that area to minimize that fire growth and eliminate any future property loss.
But the clusters of wildfires are only minimally contained, and authorities expect them to grow.
I believe this fire will grow before it gets fully contained. Yes, sir, I do.
Some residents who evacuated returned to scenes of total destruction.
It was absolutely unreal, and that the wind, I'm guessing they said 70 miles an hour. It seemed to remove the ash from the fire as it went, and we went through, I bet, 30 miles of what I can only describe as a lunar landscape, just absolute barren desert.
It's unclear what started the fire, but climate change, including excessive heat, has made extreme weather events like wildfires more common, more intense, and more damaging. 2024 began with the warmest January on record, and February is also expected to break records.
And when people begin to see these impacts in their daily lives that come from these record to near record warm temperatures, that's when those records become a little more real to them, and they pay a closer attention to what's going on.
Scientists say unless carbon emissions are reduced and climate change is reversed, we can expect to see more deadly weather events, including wildfires. Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
There are several food products that Bulgaria is proud of, with the country's unique cheeses among them. Now it's looking to put some on the Geographical Indicators list, an index of regional products created by China and the EU to protect certain goods from imitation. CGTN's Alyosha Milenkovic has visited one of Bulgaria's remote areas to see how one small dairy farm has the GI list in its sights.
3 hours drive northeast from Bulgaria's capital, Sofia, will bring you to the Balkan Mountains. Close to the town of Vratsa, it's where one of the most productive dairies can be found.
In this pristine environment at over 1,200 meters above sea level, some of Bulgaria's best cheeses are made. There are no factories around, no pollution, just an abundance of fresh air, clean water, and unspoiled grass.
Only 25 employees work at this plant, but they produce 700 tons of dairy products every month. These include the famous Bulgarian yogurt, butter and cheese, and all of those are made from locally produced milk.
I'm happy to work for this company as we can 100% guarantee that our products are made just from milk and nothing else. We don't use powdered milk like all the rest. We don't use stabilizers. So white cheese, yogurt, kashkaval, all of what we make is just using milk.
Parshevica Dairy exports some of its products to the UK, Slovenia and Italy, but the bulk are sold in domestic markets. That may be because the health benefits of Lactobacillus bulgaricus, bacteria unique to Bulgarian dairy products, are well known here. Now the government is trying to do more to put those products on the GI list to promote Bulgarian dairy products internationally.
Inclusion of these products in the list gives the Bulgarian producers an opportunity to enter the markets of other countries. And we also hope that would help create a positive opinion among the Chinese customers about these Bulgarian quality dairy products.
Currently, rose oil and wines from 2 regions are the only Bulgarian products included on the China-EU GI list. The lengthy process of registering the dairy products has started in hopes that the health benefits of the dairy products from this region will gain a wider audience. Aljoša Milenković, CGTN, Vratsa in Bulgaria.
And that is The World Today. Thanks for watching. There's more on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tierney. Well, over to Europe. And a big low pressure system is likely to take the dominance in weather for a vast majority of the western portion of Europe over this weekend, indicating the development of wet weather and a big cool down in temperatures as well. And take a closer look at the wet weather forecast first. We can notice that light to moderate intensity of rain will be unfolding here from Iberia Peninsula all the way towards into the central portion of Europe, as well as these many portions here across the Balkans on Saturday. And here by Sunday, more and heavier intensity of rain are likely to develop, particularly for the areas around the Alps, and higher elevations are likely to brace for some heavy to torrential amounts of rain. And the heavy rain pouring down will probably result in slippery roads, so please take necessary precaution and take care. And temperature-wise, we can notice that here for many portions from UK down towards into France and Spain, we'll see high temperatures dipping down into just the single digits over this weekend, and a few degrees Celsius cooler than the previous day, so please take care and be well prepared. And about business and travel, and clear skies for London during the morning hours, but notice that the temperatures difference between the highs and lows will be rather big, even more than 10 degrees Celsius, so please put on an extra layer during the morning and evening hours to stay warm. And that is all from me. Stay tuned for more City Forecast.